Well, unlike Republicans, John Kasich and Ted Cruz, Bernie Sanders is not mathematically eliminated in his primary campaign. He actually could get enough delegates to overtake Hillary Clinton. It just would be very hard even before last night. Now, with her big win in New York, Secretary Clinton is trying to press her advantage, and Senator Sanders is looking for new ways to win. Jeff Zeleny takes a look at that.
The race for the Democratic nomination is in the home stretch, and victory is in sight.
Hillary Clinton looking ahead. A triumph at home in New York, cementing her position once again as the likely Democratic nominee. An intense battle with Bernie Sanders suddenly giving way to an olive branch.
And to all the people who supported Senator Sanders, I believe there is much more that unites us than divides us.
Sanders insists he's not going anywhere, telling supporters in a fundraising appeal today, "We still have a path to the nomination, and our plan is to win the pledged delegates in this primary." But just saying it doesn't make it so. The math, always a challenge, is now a firm roadblock for Sanders. Those big crowds who rallied across New York raising expectations for what turned into a punishing 16-point defeat. Tonight, Clinton leads by 253 pledged delegates. With superdelegates, she moves even closer to the magic number of 2383 needed to clinch the Democratic nomination. Sanders advisors concede the campaign fell short.
We're a little farther behind in delegates than we hope to be.
After a raucous election night rally at Penn State University filled with blistering attacks on Clinton,
Secretary Clinton has given speeches behind closed doors to Wall Street firms for $225,000 a speech. Must be an earth-shattering speech.
a subdued Sanders arrived home to Vermont, where he said he intended to recharge and rest, but not rethink his campaign.
No, we think we have the message that is resonating throughout this country. We have come a long, long way. We have taken on the entire Democratic political establishment.
The Democratic establishment is growing restless, worrying Sanders could be a spoiler by attacking Clinton's honesty and integrity. Jennifer Palmieri, communications director for Clinton, told reporters Sanders has been destructive and is not productive to Democrats, particularly suggesting Clinton is corrupt, a line of attack Republicans are already seizing on. For now, Clinton is taking a more subtle approach.
Under the bright lights of New York, we have seen that it's not enough to diagnose problems. You have to explain how you'd actually solve the problems.
But making clear her eye is once again on November.
Donald Trump and Ted Cruz are pushing a vision for America that's divisive and frankly dangerous.
And Jeff Zeleny joins us now. So what's next for Bernie Sanders? See, if I remember from last night, he was taking today kind of off, downtime in Vermont, back on the trail tomorrow.
He did, Anderson. In the short term, it's Pennsylvania. He has 3 big events scheduled tomorrow in Pennsylvania. He'll be in Pennsylvania again on Friday. But the longer term is a little bit less clear for him. Now, most candidates at this point sort of run out of money or gas or support. That's not happening for Bernie Sanders. In fact, tonight, his campaign filed their disclosure report for the last month, raising $46 million. They have $17 million cash on hand, so that's not an issue here. The challenge here for Senator Sanders is in the next week. Can he put on some big wins on the board next week, maybe in Pennsylvania? Would that sort of, keep his momentum alive? The Clinton campaign feels very confident again about next week because they're all close primaries, like New York, Democrats only. So the issue for Senator Sanders is how he moves forward. Will he close down this campaign as a protest candidate or a problem candidate for Hillary Clinton? Some Democrats are worried that he is eating away at her credibility, on trust, on honesty, other things. The person to watch here, Anderson, I'm told, is Jane Sanders. She's one of his top advisors. They were huddling together all day long. So what she advises him, their private discussions will give a lot of insight into how far he goes forward, how aggressively he goes forward.
All right, Jeff Zeleny, a lot to watch for. Jeff, thanks very much. Back with our panel. As a Sanders supporter, do you want to see your candidate still going after Hillary Clinton as hard as he has been? With albeit on the issues, or do you want to see, just for the future of the party, however it pans out, a change in tone or focus?
Well, I want to answer that, but something happened before. I just want to make a comment on it. I saw the segment before, and I think it's easy for Christine and I, as progressives, to criticize Donald Trump, but I want to give a lot of props to Tara, because in our own party, I think it's very hard to stand up and call Donald Trump for what he is, and I really, as a Democrat who's never voted for a Republican, I congratulate you for having that courage.
Realize you've just completely canceled my conservative card.
I know.
I didn't mean,
I
didn't mean to say that, but I do think that that's very important coming from a conservative
No.
to actually call him out because of what that means for the country. So thank you very much. Look, I think there's a difference between personal attacks, which I believe Bernie has not engaged in, versus the issues. And I want to go actually to what, talking about courage, what Dana did at the debate, where she pressed Hillary Clinton several times about the Wall Street transcript. And she kept after it like a good reporter, never got an answer, because that's about a bigger issue. The Wall Street transcripts is about the corruption in government. And I don't mean that some sort of illegal thing, but the influence peddling that everybody on both sides, Republicans and Democrats, think has affected our democracy.
But when Bernie Sanders has been asked specifically about, you know, to name a specific example in which her influence has been bought.
Was
and I will
another
give you,
question
and I will give you, I was
and
I will give you the answer to that. The bankruptcy bill. When Hillary Clinton first opposed the bankruptcy bill and then became the second most recipient of banking money and magically all of a sudden was for the bankruptcy bill. Just to explain to the viewers, that basically made it impossible for regular working people to file bankruptcy. It affected millions of people. Hillary Clinton went with the banking industry. It's a very specific thing that hurt millions of working Americans.
It's a little, just covering the hill, it was, I mean, I don't want to get into the weeds on this, and I won't, it was a very complicated road legislatively.
But there were, yes, but there were lots of, I know about this because I'm a labor movement person, and we fought very hard to defeat that bill because it hurt working Americans and it was a gift to the credit card industry. Look, and that's just a fact. Now you can,
Christine.
Yes, go ahead, Christine.
Well, let me just say it was more complicated then, and understanding you're describing it quickly on a show like this, but it was more complicated than that, A. But B, in the debate, Senator Sanders was pushed, as he should have been, to give a specific example, and notwithstanding the one you gave, he had no example. And I think his silence spoke volumes about how baseless this charge really is. But if you want to talk about industries and impacts, why is the gun industry the only industry out there in America that Senator Sanders doesn't feel should have, is only one that the senator feels Americans shouldn't have the right to sue against? We don't do that with the car industry. We don't do that for pharmaceuticals. Why does he have that position?
Well,
is it because there are a lot of gun owners in Vermont?
No,
isn't that politics in action as well? The exact kind of politics you claim you don't want to have?
All right.
So I think he's answered that a number of times.
Not to my satisfaction.
Okay, well, I'm sorry you're not satisfied, but I'll answer it for the audience since they want to hear again. He has said that he was concerned in that legislation that if some local guy in Vermont, not just in Vermont, whether you agree with the explanation or not, walked into the store, bought a legal product, and went crazy into a theater and killed people, that person should not be held responsible. At the same time, Bernie has said subsequent to that he wants to rethink this and look at this. Right. And he's open, as I think everybody public said, he's open to changing legislation.
But can I ask a question?
No, let's just move on. Let's not get so policy specific.
Sorry.
No, it's fine. It's interesting. but just to get Peter and Dana in on this, I mean, do you see the rhetoric changing or needs to change? I mean, certainly there's a lot of people on the Clinton side who are very concerned about where this race goes in the final weeks.
I think she's going to be fine. I don't think that the history of primaries suggests that candidates really are that damaged by these difficult intramural fights. Remember what happened? Barack Obama versus Hillary Clinton was pretty tough. But I think actually, you know, what's remarkable is that even though Hillary Clinton, I think, is going to be the nominee, Bernie Sanders has really won the ideological argument. And you know how you know? She never defends Wall Street. Now, if you had gone back to the 1990s, what a Democrat, what Bill Clinton would have said at that point was no. Yes, there are excesses, but Wall Street has an important role in this country. It allocates capital. We need financial markets. They do some valuable things. What's really remarkable is that she has never actually tried to make that argument in response to Bernie Sanders. That suggests how much he has won the debate inside the Democratic Party.
But we don't know.
Right. She won't say it publicly. She won't say it publicly.
Peter makes an excellent point. Thank you for that. And he's defined the whole debate in the primary. And Hillary Clinton has taken positions she has never taken before.
That's
the CNN itself looked at how many times she called the Trans-Pacific Partnership the gold standard. Over 40 times, I think he said. All of a sudden, magically, oh, she's never been against these.
A number of policy positions have changed, and often just right before a debate.
Many. You cannot
look.
That Hillary Clinton is not the Hillary Clinton that you would expect.
But there's enough. You mentioned the gun industry. That's actually something that's turned on its head for the Democratic Party, because I'm old enough to remember when Democrats didn't want to touch the gun debate with the 10-foot pole because they felt, rightly so in many cases, that they were getting beaten all over the South and in many heavily rural states because they were so anti-gun. Those days are completely over. Right. The irony of all ironies, because you have this progressive candidate who happens to come from a gun state that Hillary Clinton wanted to get to the left of.
I remember back in 2008, then candidate Obama, calling Hillary Clinton
Annie Oakley.
Right. And I think,
and in Pennsylvania, clinging to their God and guns, remember?
Right. The Republican Party this cycle, I think, is not going to be able to nominate a strong enough candidate to make Democrats pay for it. But a different kind of election, this position on guns would hurt the Democrats in certain Midwest.
We got to take a quick break. Coming up, can Ted Cruz and John Kasich do anything to gain the upper hand at a contested convention? What a Republican Party meeting at a resort in Florida has to do with tomorrow to discuss the upcoming convention. They should have plenty to talk about. It's part of a larger meeting at RNC members at a resort in Hollywood, Florida this week. There's typically a lot of schmoozing. There's a yacht party on the agenda, for instance. However, this election season, obviously, it's like no other, and there are a ton of issues to sort out. Phil Mattingly joins us now with more. How much do we know about what's going on at these meetings?
Well, these meetings are really going on in a series of behind-the-scenes sit-downs that are working on dual tracks, Anderson. First, you have the candidates, obviously Ted Cruz and John Kasich, down here in person today to meet with the 168 RNC members, or at least as many as they can fit in their quick appearances down here, and there's a really good reason why. All 168 are voting delegates at the Cleveland Convention. As you look at the possibility of an open convention, these are the type of people that these candidates want to hear their message and potentially consider jumping on board with them, even if not on the first ballot, then possibly the second ballot. The other is a series of closed-door meetings going on in between RNC members. Now, you talked about the rules. Coming out of this meeting, it's not necessarily that there will be changes to the rules going into the convention. There won't be, but there will be recommendations, and how the committee resolves some issues that have really blown up over the last couple of days about what those rules recommendations will look like are very important. That's what we'll get an answer to tomorrow. Today, it's been how they resolve those issues behind the scenes, Anderson.
So just to be clear, I mean, you just said it, but just to repeat, for emphasis, it won't affect any of the rules for this convention, correct? It's the delegates who decide those.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Coming out of this meeting, there won't be changes to those rules. But what this does really is set a template for the Rules Committee meeting. And yeah, this is getting in the weeds, no question about it. But why this matters right now is the reality that a lot of the 168 members, candidates, and staff are dealing with inside the hotel behind me. A contested convention is a possibility, and if that's the case, the rules package that comes out the week before the convention will be extraordinarily important in guiding how that looks. That's what makes this week most important. I think the expectation is what they're going to send across this week will look very much like it did before this week actually even started. But the conversations that are happening, the potential for rules changes that might be considered going forward, all those issues are being batted around behind the scenes, Anderson, and that's why this is such an important week.
All right, Phil Mattingly. Phil, thanks very much. Earlier tonight, I spoke with Sean Spicer, the chief strategist and communications director for the RNC. He used a football analogy, but basically said the rules are the rules, and the candidates have to know them and follow them. Listen.
It takes 1,237 delegates to pass any order of business, and I think we've got to remember that. There's no other time that we would ever say, in whether it's politics or sports, hey, if you get to the 2-yard line, well, that counts as a touchdown. That's just not how the rules work. I think it then be incumbent upon the Trump campaign and the other campaigns to make the case to the delegates, both on that first round of voting, but then on every subsequent number of votes, to get to that majority. But that's the process that we've gone through dating back to 1856. Ultimately, a majority of the delegates will decide every aspect of our convention.
Well, also in Hollywood, Florida tonight, a CNN delegate analyst and former RNC chief of staff Mike Shields. Mike, you've attended these meetings before. what exactly can these leaders do if they aren't able to actually change the rules? I mean, because both Cruz and Kasich, as we just mentioned, they thought it was important enough to actually fly all the way down there.
Well, but this is a meeting of the Republican National Committee. The 168 members of the RNC, which is the Republican Party, are in the hotel. As Phil said, they're meeting here. They're having what is a quarterly meeting. It's a regularly scheduled meeting that was already going to take place. But when they're all in one place, it means that these are the things that are being discussed. They're getting ready. They're on the verge of going to what could be a contested convention. And so they're trying to sort out, how are we going to handle that? What are the things we have to put into place? I can tell you from the chairman's perspective, they're trying to put an open and transparent convention on. They know that if you have a contested convention, there's going to be a lot of delegate arguments. There's going to be a lot of rules and things that have to go on. And the RNC itself has to play a role to be very transparent and put something on that the public can see that is being handled by the delegates and not by anybody else. That's a really big priority for the chairman.
All right, so let's look ahead to after California, which is on June 7th. Let's just say Trump doesn't have 1237 needed to secure the nomination. What happens then? Because these unbound delegates, they could make or break the game at that point.
They could, and so you're going to see a campaign just to those unbound delegates. It's almost like a mini campaign just to the people that are unbound to try and put him over. And you see critics of the RNC rules right now, the Trump campaign, some people in the media, bloggers, what they're not saying is what they would do about it. They're upset with the way the rules are, even though these are the rules, as Sean Spicer said, that have been around forever. And they're sort of upset with them and they say it's rigged, but they're not really coming up with a prescription of what should they do. Should they have the chairman just deem the rules to be different? I think what you're really going to see is a realization after June 8th. These are the rules. The delegates are going to decide. The delegates decide everything, and there's going to be a campaign to those delegates to try and win them over to put a candidate over 1237.
So in reference to unbound delegates under the scenario, someone close to Trump's team, I think, told Politico, this is like a Super Bowl ticket. The price only goes up. Going on to say, quote, if I were a delegate, I'd say I'm unpledged and hang my hat out there, wine me and dine me. I think there are going to be some free trips to Cleveland. Is that what this could come down to, whining and dining?
I give the delegates a little bit more credit than that. I mean, sure, you're going to try and influence them, but these are Republican Party regulars. These are the county folks that have worked their way up through the Republican Party over the years. They care about the country. I have a lot of faith in those delegates. I think that they're the people that put up the yard signs and put on the bumper stickers. You see them wearing the funny hats. They're hardly, by the way, what you would consider to be the establishment. And I think they're really going to try and decide what's best for the country. In the past, when we've had an open convention through history, the delegates really made a decision based on who they thought could win in the fall. And I think that's going to be one of the critical cases that these candidates are going to have to make to those delegates, is who can actually beat Hillary Clinton in the fall.
All right, Mike Shields. Mike, thanks very much. Coming up, the first criminal charges have been filed in the Flint, Michigan water crisis, with the promise of more to come. City and state employees have been charged with misconduct, neglect. Some residents, though, say after all they've been through, they will not be.
This just got interesting.
People in Flint say the blame goes all the way to the top, to the governor, and they want him held accountable. But for now, 2 state and 1 city government employees have been charged with, among other things, willful neglect of duty, misconduct in office, and tampering with evidence. Our investigative correspondent, Sarah Ganem, reports.
I only did it because I was instructed to.
In his only sit-down interview given to CNN last month, Mike Glasgow, now one of those charged in the Flint water crisis, admitted he altered reports which made the water here seem safe when it was not. Glasgow worked at Flint's water treatment plant for a good portion of his career.
Who told you to eliminate those highest 2 samples?
It would have been 2 gentlemen from the Michigan Department of Environmental Quality.
Can you tell me who?
Michael Prisby and Stephen Bush.
Did you ever argue with them on whether or not you should change it?
No, I just asked the question why, and they cited some, I guess, solidified reasoning to remove a couple items, so I didn't question it much further.
The items were homes with high lead levels, part of a water quality report that would have raised red flags about Flint's drinking water. Instead, it was months before it was discovered that Flint wasn't following federal corrosion control regulation and the water was poison.
They failed Michigan families. Indeed, they failed us all, and I don't care where you live.
The Michigan Attorney General charged Glasgow on Wednesday with tampering with evidence and neglect, not buying Glasgow's claim that he was simply following orders, the special prosecutor even comparing it to a Nazi war criminal's defense.
That defense didn't work in several places when, you're ordered to do something, right? Nuremberg and the like. It's a tough situation with regards to Mr. Glasgow, But when you did a criminal act, an overt act, and you had the corrupt mind to do that act, you're going to be charged.
The charges pile even higher for Prisby and Bush, accused of a cover-up of the toxic water. Bush even wrote in this February 2015 email to the EPA that Flint had optimized corrosion control when it did not. The crisis here has left Flint deprived of clean water for nearly 2 years. It caused Flint children to be poisoned with lead. 12 people died from the waterborne Legionnaire's disease, and officials are investigating a link to the poorly treated water. The investigation won't stop here.
These charges are only the beginning.
The Michigan Attorney General said they wouldn't rule out anyone as they continue to investigate, even embattled Governor Rick Snyder.
No one is above the law.
Desperately trying to hang on to his job, Snyder announced last week that he would drink filtered Flint water for 30 days to make a point that it was safe, something that offended many Flint residents. Twitter lit up with comments like these. An important tip to remember is to not trust you. You should resign. And filtered? Enjoy. They ain't serving you filtered water in the clink. And today, when asked whether he believes he did anything criminal, Snyder gave little.
I don't believe so.
Yet the governor has admitted to bearing some responsibility, as does Mike Glasgow.
There may be some people out there, some members of the community who believe that you share some responsibility for this. What do you say to them?
Think about that every day. I was a key figure, I guess, in some of this, looking at, I'm operating the treatment plant, overseeing some of the sampling, but born and raised here in Flint, I would never do nothing to hurt this city or its citizens.
Sir Ganem joins us now. What happened in court today? Did they enter pleas?
So two of them did, Anderson. Stephen Bush and Mike Prisby both entered pleas of not guilty. Mike Glasgow has yet to be arraigned. It's worth noting that there are several state employees above these three who made significant decisions that played out in the course of this crisis. Many of them